Today I'm going to set up my bullet journal. Come plan with me. So I'm ready to start planning for my trip to the Grand Canyon. And to stay organized, I plan to use the bullet journal system. So if you're not familiar with the bullet journal system, I recommend you check out Ryder Carroll's YouTube channel, Bullet Journal, or his website. I'll put the link below. So today I'm going to just set up my journal for my Grand Canyon trip. So I'm not actually going to do any planning today. I'm just going to get the journal set up for the planning. So in today's video, we're going to go over some of the basics of what it means to bullet journal, and I'm going to list a number of mistakes and misperceptions I had when starting bullet journaling. So again, this video is focused on the setup. You'll see in the future videos how I'm actually going to use this journal to do the planning. So to do bullet journaling, the first thing you need is your supplies. So for this, I have gotten the Write in the Rain All-Weather Universal Journal. And really, for this purposes, I could use any journal. It doesn't matter, something you can write on. But the reason I went with this, as you can see as advertised, is it's all-weather, tough, and the paper defies rain, sweat, and grime. So the reason I went with this one is because I want to be able to take this journal with me to the Grand Canyon, and I don't want to have to worry about being on a rugged trail where it might get wet or muddy. And this is a pretty durable journal and should hold up pretty well because of that. So a bullet journal, what is it? So I don't know if you're like me, but when it comes to planning, I have a tendency of making lists and putting them on Post-it notes, and I spread those Post-it notes all over the house, and I just have a hard time keeping track of them. And so I was looking for a way to become more organized when I stumbled across the bullet journal system. The point of a bullet journal in its simplest form is it's a way of organizing lists. But it can be so much more than that because you can use it as a journal. I can put pictures in here later from my trip. So basically, in addition to using it to plan, I will use it as a memory book, as a journal to record my trip. So I can take it with me and use it. So when I'm in the Grand Canyon, I can make notes if I see anything I want to remember. That's the reason I went with this bullet journal. Alright, so we're going to tear here to open. So tip number 1. I would recommend when you first get a journal like this that you open it up and just kind of crease it. It's going to make it easier to work with because it's so stiff. And you don't have to crease every page or anything, but just kind of go through in a few spots. And I don't know if you guys in the comments have any recommendations on best way to do this, but in general, I'm just going to pick a few spots kind of throughout. So you can see here at the beginning, we've got a place we can put our name, address, phone, what project we are. Let's go ahead and add that right now. Grand Canyon. So when it comes to setting up a bullet journal, one of the first things you'll want to do is set up an index area. And this actually has a little space for that. You can say what page that something is on, and then you put the subject on which that page covers. And then if you need the date. Well, I don't know if this will be enough space for everything I plan to do, so I went ahead and I titled this index. So when I first started doing bullet journals, I didn't use the index at first because it didn't make sense to me why it'd be helpful, but really the index is what makes your lists organized. It helps you find them later. I was finding I would write down a list somewhere in the bullet journal and I couldn't find it. And so you'll notice I'll have to decide where I want to do it, but there are no pages on here. So what I'll end up doing is I'll end up going into here. I'll probably do it at the top. Although on all my other ones, no, I've mixed it up. It just feels like the top will be the place to put it. Now you can get these journals numbered. Not this particular version, but Write in the Rain does have a version that is numbered. What I do when I number is I don't do the back side, I only do the front side. But I think I'm getting ahead of myself. So anyways, here is the index. Depending on how long your bullet journal is, I would recommend having normally 2 pages. If you plan to use an index, if you're not sure, I would recommend having at least 2 pages. If not, try starting with 1 at the very least, and at the worst, you don't use it. At the best, you learn to love it. If you only reserve 1 page for the index at the beginning, you could always say at the bottom here, like, go to page, for instance, you could go to the very back and say go to the very back and continue the index if you wanted to later. Or if you wanted to magically pick the middle of the book because that's the next page you have, then you could always continue the index anywhere you want. But the index, having it at the front is easiest because you can find it right away. That is the purpose of the index. So the next thing we're going to set up, and I've already set it up here, is the future log. So what I've done is we're currently in September, so I do not need to write September down because that's not in the future, it's where we currently are. And I just added the months. October, November, December, January, February, March, and April. So this leads to misconception number 1. That is, why spend the time setting this all up if you can just go and buy a planner that's already made up? And I think this is a great example right here of why you might do that. A planner, it might take the time to, it might start with January and go through the whole calendar year. Sometimes you can get maybe like a half year. I don't know if 9 months, or it only does 9 months worth. You can do weird fiscal year stuff. It's pretty common to see like a July through June planner, something like that. But in this particular case, I only need a plan until my trip. My trip will probably be late April, maybe the beginning of May. But right now I'm planning on targeting late April. And so I only need to make notes for these months, and that's it. These particular 2 months, I work a lot in those particular 2 months, so I don't anticipate I will be doing much. I don't have to do much for the trip then. I think most of my last minute preparations and putting things together will be in this month, but just in general for this trip, I don't think I'll be having to write down much in the future log anyways. But the idea of the future log is, for example, the application I need to turn in, I would put that date in the month that would need to get done. So it's just basically a way of having a calendar and writing down things that need to get done. But if I need to go into more detail, the more detail will be on the following pages. And then again, this is only for future months, so I can do any current month to-do list on further pages. So this is just kind of an overview of important dates that I need to keep track of. If something pops into my head and I'm like, oh, I need to jot that down and remember to do that in January, then here's my opportunity to remind myself. So I'm actually going to skip the next section and skip to the end. So this next thing I am going to add is kind of, I don't know if I'll end up using it. I've kind of attempted to do it before, and it's not been a huge success yet, but I like to try and do it again. So the idea is I need to focus on 3 parts to planning for this trip. One is the itinerary, so knowing which days each item must happen when it's due, or when it's going to happen. And then next is training. So I want to be able to hike 20 miles in one day with no issue. I'm not sore the next day. And then the last piece of this is supplies. I need to make sure I have my packing list, I know what I already have, and what I need. So as I mentioned before in my first video, these are the 3 areas I need to focus on. And so knowing that, what I plan to do here is break this into 3 sections, one for each of these. Let's see here. So I'm going to just kind of use these as a template to draw my lines. And that doesn't matter so much. You'll see I'm using a 0.5 millimeter pencil to write with this. I'm experimenting. It writes great. I'm having no problems with this at all. And so I'm going to put at the top here, so this is a great way of using my lines now. So you can see I'm going to just use above the line here. And I'm going to write in. Let's see if I have a good sense of how to get this lined up. Itinerary. And then this next section will be training. And then this last section here will be supplies. So basically what this represents along the top is the projects that I need to keep track of. And so then what I'm going to do, so for example, I'm going to end up using Post-it notes for this. And just to get an idea, yeah, that should work. See, I said I like to use Post-it notes. So I can put Post-it notes in my journal actually, and use it that way. This doesn't have to be very exact, but just to keep things kind of in order. So what this section will be is next action. And then this section will be pending. So in other words, each of these areas I need to keep moving forward, so I want to clearly define what my next action is. And so my first one was I needed a space to clean, or I needed a space to look at what supplies I have, so I needed to clean the living room and make sure that was ready. So I've done that. So then my next step will be lay out all the camping supplies. And then after that, I'm going to compare lists. So I can have more than one next action item here, because these will kind of happen simultaneously. And I don't have anything pending at the moment, but if I think of stuff like maybe stuff I want to buy, I might put it here. And I want to look at my camping supplies first, because maybe I already have it. Then say I'm done looking at all my stuff, the stuff I want to purchase, I can then move up here. And that will be my next action item. So the idea behind this is it gives me a way at a glance, I can just pick up my bullet journal and say, what do I need to do now? And I can just look and say, okay, I'm on top of this, I'm not on top of this, I'm maybe on top of this or not on top of it. So the next thing I'm going to do for my bullet journal is I'm going to add some duct tape. So one thing that was recommended to me is to buy a bright journal. And Write in the Rain has a yellow and orange version of this, which is what I would have preferred to get, which isn't very pretty, but when you think about it, if you're taking it into the wilderness and you set it down, say you set this down on something brown, then guess what? You can't find it again. So you know what we're going to do to help us locate it is we're going to cover that up. And I'm not going for perfection here by any means. Let's see here. So I'm just trying to kind of get it even. Doesn't need to be perfect. I'm going to end up covering the back. So, last chance to see this thing, huh? And we'll open this up and just cut it. So that is that idea. That way I'm not completely destroying. Let's just cut that. It's kind of was a little off in that. Just intended to be a neat little design. So that way it kind of blends in with the surface below, but it glitters. I'm hoping maybe the light will catch my attention. It's a different color, so between this and that color, this is a darker color. They're both very natural colors, so it might be hard to find it yet. So I'm going to see if I can eventually find a strip of some other color that is very bright and identifiable, and maybe what I can do is find something I could write on and add something here that says where I'm going, Grand Canyon or something like that. But anyways, this is duct tape, so I like to assume it should be pretty durable and hold up pretty well. So we're going to end here with the bullet journal, and that's the basic setup.